Punching Up, a Nintendo podcast, is brought to you by you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Punching Up. I'm your host, Dustin, and this is our holiday break special. Not really Christmas special per se, but we are here recording in advance because we are currently on vacation. The Last Stand crew, we're just chilling, trying to not do as much work, but we're here for you in advance so you have something to listen to. And we're going to be doing this episode mostly about looking back on the Switch's life, since it seems like 2024 is going to be the launch of a new Switch. So I thought, hey, we want to focus 2024 on looking forward. This is a good time to look back. I'm not alone here with me on Punching Up, though. I've got most of the crew with me. Starting off, Mama Micah. Hello. How are you on this fine Monday morning?
I'm doing very well. And Dustin, I wanted to note that on the last episode of Punching Up, which, all right, it's going to be a little jumbly because it's the holiday episode. On a previous episode of Punching Up, yeah. I mentioned my English muffin debacle of the muffins were not split and I had to cut them open with a knife, or I was just like mangling them with my hands. Mm-hmm. A lovely listener emailed me in regards to an order that they had placed in our store. But as a PS, they had included the English muffins I've been getting. I've also not been split correctly.
Oh.
So I was just like, I'm not alone. I'm not crazy. It just validated the whole experience of like something's wrong at the Thomas factory.
But and that means there's something wrong in America, really.
You know, that's symptomatic for sure.
Wow. For sure. I mean, this is really a big thing now. Like, is this a widespread problem? I'm assuming they have multiple bakeries or factory, whatever you want to call them, across the nation. Sure. So is this a isolated issue, or is this God forbid, an intentional change?
Right? Is this another EL Fudge cookie debacle of one day we bought those cookies and they were just never the same? So yeah. I don't know. I'd like to think that Thomas will clean up their act, but it is a bit surprising to have somebody else say, no, every package that I've bought has also not been split. So I don't know. I'm concerned. I'm a concerned citizen.
This is, I don't know, somehow shrinkflation in some way. Maybe there's, you're not getting quite the same amount. Anything could be possible.
Perhaps. Maybe the English muffins got smaller and now when they bake them, they dry out differently. Now they don't split so easy. I mean, I don't have an old one to compare it to, though. We'd have to fish one out of the garbage.
Right. Well, I'm glad to hear you're doing well, and glad to hear we have some updates on this conundrum we have. Moving along, our boy Dagan Moriarty. What's going on with that shirt there? Is that Dragon Ball?
No, this is One Piece.
Oh, I only see okay, it's got Sabo and dude.
This is an old, I don't want to say old. It could be like 5 years old though. What Uniqlo, right?
Oh,
when
yeah,
Uniqlo
they've done a bunch of collaborations.
Right?
Yeah.
Japanese Gap, as I like to call it.
Right.
They had like a whole One Piece, and I feel like they were kind of prophetic in some way. It was before One Piece really hit. Mm-hmm. It was that long ago. It might have been 4 years ago. I don't know. But yeah. And I was just like, oh, that's cool. They're very comfy. And Uniqlo is like the last company that makes reasonably priced clothing. Literally. I was looking at New Balance sweatshirts. I was like, I want a New Balance hooded sweatshirt. Let me go look at the price. $180.
Oh,
why?
Goodness.
Well, for what?
For what?
What am I paying? $180 for a hooded sweatshirt?
That's more than LL Bean. Like that's more insane. Than LL Bean prices. And that's, for me, LL Bean is a level of like country fancy.
Yes.
That if you're a bumpkin like I am, like that's a quality present is an LL Bean shirt. All right. That's more than they'd charge. That's out of bounds.
Oh, it's too much. It's just, I can't even believe what's happening with the price of everything. And the Thomas's thing, I remember even back, I went through a big English muffin phase in high school. Like that was my after school snack. Like I would just toast them up with some butter and some mozzarella cheese melted on top. Mm. I was like going bananas with the carbs in high school. I wasn't thinking that way. It was just, that's just what appealed to me. But I remember there were like the odd package of Thomas's that had the fork split groove just wildly off center. So you would get the one half would just be like a cap and the other half would be, 90% of the English muffin. It was like, what is happening?
You've
what
just basically just peeled the scab off the top and then like the other half, but then it toasts up, like one half gets way too crispy in the toaster. The other half is too thick.
I was going to say the one part would be like a cracker after you toast it.
It was more appetizing than a scab.
Yeah, just an English muffin for ants. It was like ridiculous. I remember that happened kind of frequently. I don't know what year that was, 91. Say something like that. Would you guys, this is where I wanted to start though. Would you guys just weigh in quickly for me about something, maybe make me feel better or just admit that I was wrong about this, okay? I think I may have committed a faux pas in some way. So the animation studio that I work for, just like an hour or two ago, they're down in Atlanta, so same time zone. I was just checking in. I said, hey guys, good morning. It was my director and my production assistant. I said, hey, what's going on? I'm available these days this week. If you need any revisions or anything comes in, let me know. And then I said, I hope you're having a properly caffeinated Monday morning. And I sent it. And I was like, oh shit, wait a second. Is that offensive for people who don't drink caffeinated beverages? Did I commit some sort of faux pas? Was that offensive to somebody who's like caffeine?
No, I don't think so.
Okay,
I mean,
all right.
Like I went years without drinking coffee because of my heartburn issues. Like I can have it again now, but like I couldn't have coffee for like 6 or 7 years. And I mean, that wouldn't have fazed me at all because, the proper level of caffeine is per person. So like Dustin's proper level of caffeine is different from mine, which was 0. So, that still applies, right?
I would think so. I'm not trying to be offensive, but now in this era where everything's potentially offensive, got to be careful. Got to be careful what you say. I really do abide by that. Like I say very little when it comes to my dealings with work. I'm not talking about podcasting. Here we can just fly off at the mouth and offend everybody and it's fine. Kind of. So, sort of. More so.
I remember I was corrected a few years ago, politely, but still very annoying. Because I said, you guys said, it was either in like school or something. I said like someone was blind or a blind person.
Oh.
And I was told that they were visually impaired.
Oh, that's just egregious. My uncle's blind. No one has ever said like Uncle Brad's visually impaired. Like Brad will introduce himself and tell you that he's blind. Like that's just so far.
Yeah, I was like, all right, I guess, but I'm just going to not say that in front of you now.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just curious if there's any, blind people out there that just don't want to be called blind, if that's offensive. I've never heard of that. Or is that something that, non-blind people made up for blind people to be offended about? Just like, oh, well, we shouldn't say that anymore because you say, oh, what are you, blind? Stuff like that. So it's become derogatory. But then here's what always happens with that. And we saw this with Mentally Challenged, is that people just, the high school kids, they move on, and adults too. They move on and just be like, hey, I remember kids in high school being, oh, you mentally challenged. It's like, well, yeah, you've just kind of like moved it down. And so they're eventually going to have to change that too. So
exactly.
Next time someone misreads something, you just say, what are you, visually impaired? Well, I guess it doesn't have quite the same ring to it.
But that's the thing. It has a whole other thing of you're not even supposed to say read the room anymore because they're well, some people with learning disabilities can't read the room. And I'm like, I can't tailor everything I say to the 1% of people who maybe can't do it.
Wow.
Like that, it's too far. It's just too far.
It's too far.
Well, let me get out ahead and just say apologies to the caffeine impaired.
Yeah.
That takes care of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, dude. Yeah, I think, man, caffeine's great. I have cut back in the last few years, but I think I kind of had a wake up call once when I had coffee with some friends, and I had a pour over, and then I had a cortado, which is like 1 or 2 shots. And then I had a cold brew on the way out for my drive to work. And I would basically, I've never had a real panic attack, but I imagine this is the closest I ever got, just from like, I was like shaking. I was like, well, there are limits to things, but.
Yeah, you got to switch to decaf after like the 2nd or 3rd cup.
Yeah. It's a good strategy. Yeah.
But to address something I'm sure many of the audience has already picked up on, Gene is not here today. Don't worry. He's fine. He just messaged us this morning, said he wasn't feeling too well. He didn't think he was going to be able to record. We said, no problem. But we can't reschedule just because things are crazy right now. So Gene is not with us, but he will be back, I'm assuming. Unless something's tragically wrong, he'll be back soon. I guess this is the last episode of the year, so he'll be back next year when we do our first episode in 2024. But it's weird for us. He'll be on next episode that you guys have already heard. So anyway, I need to not make this any more confusing than it already is. Patreon.com/laststandmedia is where we are our home. That's where we live, all of us together in this little Patreon home where you can support us and get early access to this show. Right now, if you're not on Patreon, you're getting it on Fridays. But if you're on Patreon, you can get this bad boy on Tuesdays. That's a whole 3 days early. So think about that. But it's not just Punching Up. You also get early access to Sacred Symbols, Defining Duke, Constellation, Knockback. It's all there for just $5 a month. And we have lesser tiers. We've got higher tiers, a whole smorgasbord of options for you. So consider helping us out there. Now, guys, before we get into the main topic, I did have one write-in I wanted to read from Jeb Christensen, who says, "Hello, P Up crew. This is my first write-in as an LSM patron. I've been a patron for about 3 months at the $5 tier, and I have to say that I'm very satisfied." And if you just say satisfied in a certain tone, it gives it a totally different context.
It absolutely does.
Any freeloaders out there who are on the fence about becoming a member should pull the trigger. I'd like to shout out my buddy Dan Root, who shouted me out back on episode 8 of the show. Jeb Bush signing out. Dude, what if this was Jeb Bush? P.S. Dustin is killing you as host. Thank you, Jeb. So yeah, I don't know if you guys remember this. Dan Root was someone was called out. Jeb was called out by Dan Root, and now Dan Root is the reverse call out. So what does Dan have to do now? Because Jeb was called out to become a patron, and here he is. So you have to up his pledge. That sounds scummy to say that. You don't have to do that.
I like this game.
No, but they do have to have a duel of some sort.
Oh.
Now, this could be an online battle. This could be some sort of grocery cart race. But there needs to be some sort of, now we have to bring it into the real world. There needs to be some sort of competition.
Yeah. Maybe we can involve the NES Zapper in this somehow.
Oh, absolutely.
Dude.
Right? Nintendo, so make it Nintendo facing.
Yeah, that could be. Have you ever seen the people have like painted actual pistols to look like the NES Zapper, which I think is kind of awesome. Imagine pulling out that piece at a you're the one counteracting a robber. Like a robber, he's at the bank and you're like, no, I got this. And you pull out the Zapper. And he laughs immediately because he thinks he's got the Zapper until, put a cap right in his fucking face.
I mean, violent and hilarious. I mean, how can you get
just
any better?
It's something to think about. So yeah, thank you, Jeb. And also shout out to your buddy, Dan. But guys, let's get into the main topic. We're not doing news. We're not doing what you've been playing. We're just doing our main topic here. And Dig, do we have a segment?
Yeah, I got a little something cooked up. Just a little something, but it should be fun.
Fantastic. That's good to hear. So we got that. And of course, then we'll do some questions at the end. Know what we've been playing just because it's going to be totally messed up since we're recording in advance. But let's talk about the main topic, and that is looking back at the Nintendo Switch. And as I said earlier, when we come back next year, we're going to be so focused on what's to come. And 2024 will be the final partial year of the Switch, but 2023 is kind of the last hurrah of it being the main platform because all signs point to next year, a new Nintendo home platform or whatever, I guess, hybrid will be revealed, most likely. So I thought, hey, this is the great time where we're looking for something to be a little more evergreen, where we can think back about the Switch when it came out and our memories throughout the life of the console. So I guess let's just get some general thoughts going here. And then I know you guys can see my notes. I have some stuff about like the launch and some big moments and stuff like that. But Dig, I'll throw this to you first. The Nintendo Switch, it often to me, my gut feeling about it is this console that when it was announced, it was so different, we didn't even know what to make of it. And a lot of people thought that it wasn't even going to be successful. Think about Nintendo at the time with Wii U, and look at it now. So what are your overall thoughts about the Nintendo Switch looking back?
Yeah, I mean, we're in kind of that sunsetting era now. So it's like, it's all nostalgia and warm and fuzzies and stuff. I mean, the first thing I got to say about Nintendo Switch, I mean, even for all my years, the majority of which I've been a Nintendo fan, right? Since, my teens, it's the first console that I day one, that I was there for launch, picking up my game console. It was kind of, I don't know. It was a weird look though for me. It wasn't the typical thing that you would remember from the 90s or the aughts where everybody's crammed into the Walmart parking lot. It was much more anticlimactic than that. We have a little retro game store that's still there in my little artsy fartsy town of Doylestown. And the guy dabbles in contemporary modern games too, but it's by and large a retro game store. But he was going to do the Nintendo Switch launch. You could pre-order through him in lieu of going to whatever it is out here now in the burbs, still GameStop largely, right? So I pre-ordered my Switch through him. I was there in March in 2017. That night at midnight, it was, I think, 5 people had pre-ordered the Switch through him. So it was like a line of 5 nerds outside at midnight in this quiet little town. Everything else is long closed, dead quiet. Got home with my little bag and my Switch and Breath of the Wild. And that was the beginning of this, 6-7 year legacy with Switch. That's the first thing I think of, is that for all the Nintendo consoles, the mainline consoles and the handhelds, that was the first time I got it on from the very dawning of it. So that was, it's been quite a journey since then. And that's the other thing, Dustin, you're talking about Wii U, where I remember the conversation was, all right, like Nintendo's all but dying. Are they going to become an all software thing? Are they going to sell out to Xbox or PlayStation and just make games for the other consoles? It's so funny now, 7 years later, thinking about they're going out on the top of their game. So that arc that they wrote for themselves has been pretty crazy. And getting from A to Z has been kind of a wild ride. So I don't even know what else to talk about in that, in that sort of time span, because there's been so much.
Oh, yeah. It's been a long cycle. You think about, it used to be console generations were more in the 5-year range, and now we're pushing 7-8 years for a handheld device even, which is just crazy that it's still chugging along and doing so with tons of success. But Micah, I wanted to ask you, and obviously you can take this wherever you want, but one thing that I've been thinking about the Switch, and I'm sure this is the case with you as well, is that how different my life was in 2017. I was at my old apartment. I was married, so I had that life step, passed at that point, but I was still working at my old job and still trying to break into the industry and stuff like that. And so it was just totally different. I felt I was in a totally different place when this console came out. Now, I mean, things are totally different. I'm positive things are the same for you, where you think back to 2017, you're like, wow, that's feels like a totally different life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 2017, I'm still living up in Massachusetts. At that time, I was still working retail. I actually hadn't even gotten my IT job yet when the Switch came out. So like just the Switch and I had quite the journey together, growing up together, as it were. As like it was, I finally got like my first real job. Now I live in a different state, married. I mean, things are just completely different. One thing that stands out to me so much about the Switch is that it obviously had a gimmick with the Joy-Cons, but Nintendo didn't force it on you in the same way that they did with the Wii U. Nintendo's like, you want to play ARMS without the motion controls? Fine. And things like that were surprising. You want to play Splatoon without the motion controls? Fine. Instead of the Wii U, where it's like, just to look at the settings, you need to use the stupid tablet. On the Switch, they were like, yes, there's a gimmick. We're done trying to force it on you. And that was the right move, because a game like ARMS was intimidating for me, because I'm like, I'm trash at like some of these types of games, but I'm going to try it because it's not as difficult when you remove that element, for me anyways. And I had a ton of fun with that game. I've sunk hours into it because they let you play how you wanted to play. And same with Splatoon 2, of you take away the like forced motion controls, and now I'm like, okay, yeah, I really like this game. But otherwise, it was not for me before, when that was the only way to play it. So that was a huge step, in my opinion, for Nintendo to say these Joy-Cons are really innovative and cool. And like 1-2 Switch obviously was all about the Joy-Cons and, you know, rolling the little dice around in the cup so you can feel the haptics. But then they said, but you don't have to. And I think that was a super smart move for them, because there were just so many of us who, between like Kinect and everything, were just like, we're sick of motion controls. We don't want to do this anymore. The magic is dead. For the people who still wanted it, it was there, but Nintendo didn't force it onto you in every single title. And I think that was like a super smart move on their part.
Yeah, we definitely saw Nintendo kind of reel back from a lot of mistakes they had been making. And I think also just finally come to terms with reality of they were having such a hard time with third-party support. And it was time to consolidate their efforts on one platform with the Switch, instead of doing, you know, a mobile platform and a home console. This would allow them to create the own content that they needed, because they were struggling so bad with Wii U. And I mean, now everyone wants to release their game on Switch. And now on top of that, they have their own powerhouse of development that it's just, I think like Dagan was saying, just thinking back to how crazy and how, dude, I remember the Wii U. I remember launch day for that console, and I was a Nintendo fan. I got Wii at launch. That was really exciting, or pretty close to launch that Christmas. I remember Wii U and thinking I was going to go to my friend's house who got it. And after, I was like, oh, I'm going to go play it and I'm going to want it. I'm going to need it. And then going there and playing it and thinking, I think I'm good. Like, I don't need this right now, which eventually I did get one. And I think the Wii U is better than people give it credit for. I think It's still very flawed, but I want to go back to, I posted this link in the video or in the show notes for you guys to see. I can't put it overlaid in the video. I don't want to get copyright striked or anything, but I feel like this reveal trailer is an iconic moment in gaming when this trailer came out. And Nintendo had to take it down due to music related reasons, but you can find it easily on YouTube. I put a link for a GameSpot re-upload of the first time that we saw the Nintendo Switch. If you guys remember this iconic reveal where it shows a guy, he's playing Zelda, which was already cool. It's like, holy shit, Zelda, new Zelda. This was already so exciting just seeing it on screen. And then he goes up and he takes it out of, you know, he takes his Joy-Cons out, and it's just this very simple act of like, hey, this is what this thing does. Let's show you the possibilities of the Switch. Going as far as I remember how iconic it was that when he is in the airplane and he starts playing Skyrim, you know, which now we live in such a handheld world with stuff like, you know, Steam Deck and whatever, that it's like, oh, you can play practically any game on the go with compromises. But at the time, 2017, which really wasn't that long ago, it was like, holy shit, he's playing Skyrim on a plane without a laptop. How is that even possible? And then, of course, later in the trailer, I love seeing Mario Odyssey as well. And the girl that goes over to her friend's house, like it's a rooftop party, and she's the fucking nerd who brings her Switch. But it just turns out that Mario is that fucking cool that she ends up being, you know, the hit of the party and not a loser. But I talked enough about this trailer. Dagan, do you remember this trailer and what it meant seeing it? And I just, the name reveal and how people reacted online, it was just, it's really funny to think about now.
It is. I mean, there's something crazy too about the way Nintendo manages to feel like they're freezing time, especially in a world where it feels like time's going so fast. Like my kids, I have a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old, they say, my God, I can't believe how fast a week is going. And that's so crazy to me, because when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, I never felt like that. I never felt like, oh my God, the time's really slow. Even the kids are feeling that. But there's something about that Nintendo era And that whole ad campaign, that makes me feel like it was a year ago. It's so strange, so fresh in my mind. And I'm not sure, I didn't think this through, but am I correct in saying it was the first time Nintendo was making like an all-out effort to cater to young adults and older kids in a real kind of like embracing a real hipster sensibility? Because early on, it was very kid-friendly with Nintendo in general. Like Nintendo coming out from the arcades into the, into home consoles, it was always very kid-facing. And then with the Wii, it was, let's embrace the boomers, right? It's like retirement homes and having like commercials about that. Like, oh, it's for everybody. Now with the Switch, I felt like it was like very urban, very hipster. Bring this to the party, play this at brunch, right? Play it at the bar. It's like all the cool kids are doing it. Yo, Portland, yo, San Francisco, Boston, New York. Like, this is for you guys,
Right.
So, and at least that was the North American thing. I don't know what they were doing worldwide, but I remember feeling that and being kind of in that age bracket too, of being like, well, I was even aged out of that by then. I was in my 30s. But feeling like, all right, they're making a concerted effort, sort of similar to what Lego has been doing in the last 10 years, too. Like, this is not just for kids. But it's also, we're not, all right, like we're done with you boomers. Like, now it's for like this set. And then, it's a tale as old as time in terms of marketing and advertising, because once you get the big kids, then the little kids admire it. So then you're getting the little kids too. It's a domino effect because they look up to the big kids, the older siblings, the older cousins. So then you get everybody. So That's what I remember about it. I was old enough to see through it, but it was different from what they've done in the past, but also something that seemed like, all right, yeah, this is very clever. I understand where they're going.
Well, Dag, in watching this reveal trailer again, there are no kids in the trailer. There are, in fact, specifically the first example is the guy, you see him first taking his dog out. So you see him have responsibilities, and then he's traveling by himself, which It's not that a kid would never be on a plane, but we see him doing two very adult things with responsibility. And like I said, for the rest of the trailer too, there are no kids. And I think there's an element too, Dag, where Nintendo understands now that the kids in 1985 that played Nintendo, sure, some of them aren't there anymore, but a lot of them stuck around and they are very much a part of the audience, and they are the ones that are training their kids to play Nintendo too.
There you go.
Young
professionals. Now you grew up with Nintendo. Now you have your own money. Check out what you can spend your money on. And also you're going to have kids soon, right? Like, yeah, exactly. It's like, it's so clever that it's almost insidious.
Yeah.
In some way. It's like,
Well, and at risk of sounding like a Nintendo fanboy, which hopefully, we shit on Nintendo enough this podcast that hopefully I can bypass this a little bit, but
it's out of love.
I feel like Nintendo realized, they're like, man, we don't need to quote unquote dumb down our look or our content to appeal to everybody. We just need to make stuff that's really good because that's appealing to everybody. And that's really what I felt like is the focus of the Switch. Quality, quality, quality. But Mike, I want to get you in here too about this reveal trailer and what you thought of it. Were you sold on it when you saw this?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've always been a big fan of handheld gaming. I use the 3DS constantly. It was something that I always had it on my nightstand because first thing in the morning, I'd wake up, I'd go on Animal Crossing and, pick all my fruit, do stuff like that. And it was just like, that was my routine of like the 3DS was a huge part of my life. And this ad, as we've mentioned, it really did feel like we're advertising this as a little bit more grown up device. Like, obviously there's a ton of kids content on it over the years, but they, in a really bad way, the Wii U felt like a toy. Like the controller, even the Wii U Pro controller, light as a feather. Mm-hmm. It just it worked well for Mario Kart. I'm not saying it didn't, but that thing was plasticky, just light as a feather. It wasn't it didn't feel like a super premium experience. The tablet, which, just reminded me of like the UDraw game tablet almost, like it just wasn't a great system, honestly. Had some really awesome games on it, but that system was more convoluted than the Wii in terms of setup. You got the docking station for the tablet. You still have the sensor bar for your TV. It was just so much. And that's where it started to feel kind of like a toy, in the same way that like Xbox 360 Connect was like, all right, get dad's help to set this thing up, and it's just like, I don't want to do all this. I want it to be easy. And that was where the Switch, like Nintendo often feels like they're chasing a gimmick. The 3DS, it's 2 screens and a stylus. And on, the Wii, it's motion controls. All right. It was big at the time. The Wii U was where it started to feel like the gimmick they chose just didn't work. The Switch, of course, had its own thing of the gimmick being, it's 2 consoles in one. You play on your TV, you take it mobile. But that was awesome. Like, that really was a gimmick that made sense. Everybody could be on board with it. Whether you wanted to use it both ways or not, it didn't, hamper your experience to not want those features. It was just like, you can if you want to. And it wasn't a bad device either way. So I just felt like that commercial really sold it to me as, here's a device that's not a chintzy toy. And here's a device that is going to be catered towards a little bit older set of gamers as well, and not just the family-friendly Nintendo device.
Right. It's amazing how they were able to pack all of this information and have you understand it, what it's about, what it's for in just this short little video, which then was followed up later with the Nintendo Switch presentation in 2017. I remember watching this, and it's sort of why I think back to this event, and this was an in-person event, somewhat business style in some ways, in other ways consumer focused. It doesn't really know how to present itself. It's kind of clunky and weird, and I think kind of sent some mixed signals afterwards when we were getting the full view of what launch was going to be like, and the pricing and stuff like that. But I put in 2 trailers from this event, and I think that these are the 2 that really, really stood out, that even if there were some concerns about games like 1-2 Switch or ARMS, which I know people were like, oh no, this is Wii U 2 again. These 2 games, I think, are what made the difference in terms of the presentation, that convinced people that, hey, I'm going to have to get this even if I'm not sure about Nintendo's strategy. And that's Mario Odyssey and Zelda Breath of the Wild. I got to say, this Mario Odyssey trailer, I fucking love this trailer. I love it so much. It's the one particularly where it shows New Donk City and it's slowly panning around, and you see, immediately see it says like New Donk City. You can see the street name is Dixie, and you're like, oh shit, are they going to do Donkey Kong to some degree on the Switch? Is this what we're launching with? And then Mario jumps out of the manhole, and we get this awesome view of what Mario Odyssey was going to be without even spoiling one of the big things until seeing at the very end, the hat, Cappy, of course. And this is one of those trailers that I was watching it this morning before we were recording. I wasn't tearing up, but I felt deeply emotional about it because I love Mario Odyssey. I think it is probably in my top 3 Switch games.
Oh, wow.
Some people, I never understood. This is a 10 out of 10 masterpiece. This is just as good as any other 3D Mario game. I love it. Okay, so we'll talk about just this and then we can switch over to Zelda because it's too important. Dig, you're both a longtime Mario and Zelda fan.
Sure.
And have had mixed responses to 3D Mario.
Mm-hmm.
So when you saw this reveal for Odyssey and then eventually playing it, I guess we can work that in too.
Yeah.
How'd you feel about it?
I mean, it was exciting to have a new 3D Mario. I remember that era. We were certainly ready. My brother, we talk about Kyle all the time and how hard he is on modern Nintendo. He hates Mario Odyssey. I don't quite detest Mario. Definitely don't detest Mario Odyssey. And I look at it through the lens of my children too, and how much joy this gave them because it was their first hands-on experience basically with a new Mario. They played a lot of the 3D Mario stuff on Wii U. You know, the Wii U is where they cut their teeth, which I think is a real interesting test for vetting whether you're going to be a Nintendo fan or not. So they came up hard generationally. They watched over my shoulder when they were really little playing like Galaxy on the Wii. But their first hands-on experience was really with the Wii U, and then eventually when they got old enough on the Switch with Mario Odyssey. So they loved it. And I remember this era. I remember the ad campaigns. I remember this commercial, of course. I remember the concept with the hat, you know, the gimmick or the dynamic of having that with the whole Cappy thing. Very cute. There was something, I think I was going in overly critical because I think for me, and my age and how into the Mario Galaxy games I was, I think it was a little bit of a letdown for me. I think the Mario Galaxy games for me were a tough act to follow. You know what I mean? It was like, we didn't get into Zelda yet, but I remember being ready for Breath of the Wild because Skyward Sword was such a letdown for me. You know what I mean? So I was just prepped. I was primed for like a Zelda that would, you know, kind of fulfill its promises. With Odyssey though, I really didn't get into it. It was more just kind of watching my kids enjoy it. There's something about it. Even if I watch game footage now, there's almost kind of this modern, maybe overarching Nintendo sensibility in the game where there's something missing for me. I don't know if the world just feels empty. You know, like if you look into the background, it feels a little bit, I don't want to say static. It feels like there's something barren, and there was something off-putting about Mario, like the cartoon universe of Mario being thrust into this real life world of being downtown with business people and taxi cabs and stuff that just it wasn't gelling. And I think it's a generational thing. Kids were ready to accept it, but I had already gotten so much Mario up to this point that it seemed a little out of place, I guess.
This is conflicting for me, Dagan, hearing you say these things. I respect you. I respect your opinion, but let's throw this over to Micah. Maybe she'll be the deal breaker here. Though I don't know if did you check this game out even?
It was too difficult for me because I was super stoked on it. I'm like, all right, this is interesting. We got Mario in the city. Same as Dagan, though, that ended up being weird. Because I watched the entirety of this game be played through, but it just was like it was too difficult for me, as most Mario games are. I remember though I was super excited for it, and I was like, and the hat's adorable. Like everything about this was, I want to play it. I just didn't have the skills for it. But there was a weirdness about it of like, well, he's in our world, and the other people are shaped normal, and it's what they changed, though, not intentionally, I'm saying, but with Kirby and the Forgotten Land of like, well, that's kind of set in our world, but like, we're not here. It's like, oh, here's a mall from 1,000 years ago, and Kirby's just, bebopping around in it, and they didn't put people in it, so it's like, that didn't feel as weird. It's like, yeah, Kirby got into a portal to our world, but it's barren and empty, and it doesn't kind of make you feel strange to see Mario is like a foot tall, and you're like, wait a minute. So I didn't end up actually completing this game on my own because never could. I remember getting specifically frustrated at a moment where you had to jump like to the beat. So I just remember the tiles are flashing and it's like doot, 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 and you got to jump to the next one. And I messed it up so many times. I was just like, this is it for me. Like this is just the limit of my abilities. And I could play no further, which that's very similar thing happening in Mario Wonder. I'm really getting to a point where it's like, I don't think I'm good enough to play this. Maybe I'll give this to one of the nieces and nephews because it's kind of wasted on me. But it's something I wanted to play. And I remember being so excited for this trailer with my friends. But of course, I just couldn't get good enough.
Dagan, I don't want to give you a heart attack here on Punching Up.
Please.
But I think I might be of the opinion that I like Mario Sunshine, Galaxy, and Odyssey equally.
Okay.
And that I think they are all immaculate Mario games for different reasons. Like, I think the movement particularly is peak in Sunshine. Amazing.
Okay.
I think that Galaxy has the amazing world design.
Yeah.
It's big. I would say gameplay married with world design, because Odyssey, I love the more open style, the larger, bigger worlds. You know, they each bring something new.
It's very open. And you know what? I could suspend my disbelief in games and movies and TV. Like, usually it's Colin and I are always butting heads on that. It's like Colin, I think he's so smart that he just can't get past certain things in a thing. And I'm just like, oh, I could buy that. Whatever. Is it fun? I don't know why this was a bridge too far for me. But you're right. This was kind of this was a big slice of open world Mario. And I don't know what bothered me about it. I do remember just that one simple conceit of the hat of Cappy. I was like, I'm in. I love it. It's inventive. It's very Nintendo. Feels very Miyamoto to me. And I remember, like almost any other Mario offering, especially the mainline games, played beautifully. So fun. So fluid. A little difficult. I would say, on the higher end of maybe difficulty of 3D Mario. I remember my kids, I think they really built their video game chops up playing a game like that. But yeah, there was just something about, again, it's just I think it wasn't anything even graphically except just being thrust into those worlds that it was like, something doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. And it's just a legacy of too much Mario. I'm old, so I saw him through every iteration. And for some reason, that was the first time I was like, I don't know if I'm buying this.
Sure. Well, and I think it's worth pointing out too, that Mario has realistic rendered mustache hairs in this trailer, which was off-putting to some people. Also, Mario nipple reveal in the beach level, and that's something to think about. He's a full-blown man. He's just a very small man. So
dad bod Mario, yeah.
Next time, Mario penis reveal. It's happening.
Oh, goodness.
Speaking of Mario penis reveal, let's move over to Zelda Breath of the Wild, that launch trailer.
Mushroom stamp. I just got to say mushroom stamp. Okay.
The mushroom.
I got it
out. This presentation trailer, some of you may remember that Breath of the Wild was already kind of shown in weird ways before this. We knew it was in development for the Wii U. There's this one video where they're showing it off screen as they sit there and they're like, oh, look how it's a big open world Zelda. We still didn't really know very much about it. I think we also had that trailer where we kind of got a slice of the style where we had Link running away from one of the Guardians, and so it really wasn't until this trailer in particular from the presentation that we got our first real look at what the game would be like, along with just overall its tone. That's the main thing I get from this trailer is tone. And Dagan, the thing I wanted to ask you about is that we've seen, sort of like Mario, but I guess to a bigger degree, so many variations of Legend of Zelda. We've seen the first debut in 3D with Ocarina of Time, and even back on the 2D, we have different iterations of Link and Zelda. But then even in 3D, this was kind of the interesting point where they did Ocarina of Time and then they went total whiplash the other direction with the more cel-shaded look. And then it almost felt like begrudgingly they went back to a more serious look as well for a Twilight Princess. So it's where do you go from here? And I mean, it's the obvious answer, but it seems like kind of somewhere in the middle with what they did with Breath of the Wild. So, Dig, what do you think about this trailer, this very Studio Ghibli-esque trailer? And that's, where I bring in tone.
That's a really great way to sum it up. It feels very Miyazaki, feels very Ghibli. And I think it did. It felt like the 2D cel-shaded version of something you would see from Miyazaki's squad, when I think of Breath of the Wild now, I think about, when before we got it, the ad campaign, seeing the images, seeing the trailer, seeing the commercial and being excited. And I think for me, I have like a really specific taste. I like a wild art direction. Like I loved what Nintendo always did with Zelda, where every new game was a reimagining. We've talked about that. And in that reimagining, there was a way to reinvent it graphically. Like, I loved Majora's Mask. I loved how bold Wind Waker was. It was like, yeah, give me those crazy offbeat styles. Every time we're going to try something new and make it wildly different. No Zelda game connects to the previous Zelda game. And it was just like, it was really bold, you know, especially if you're trying to sell something, you know, and you know, having that sort of, I don't know, that kind of ambition creatively while trying to sell a product. I always thought was really interesting. That's why, for me, I was so biased against Skyward Sword, because I just realized I don't really like realistic.
I forgot to even mention that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I really like realistic Zelda. I was like, I just don't like this. I know a lot of people like it, but it's not for me. You know what I mean? I was just like, can we go back to, you know, just trying something new and something fun? And I think Breath of the Wild looked beautiful. And I love my son, who was 6 at the time, he didn't even turn 7 yet, loved this game. I mean, he squeezed every drop of game out of Breath of the Wild. He played it endlessly. He loved it. It was really his introduction to Zelda. And even in his retro gaming, Zelda is not something that he clung to. Like the 8-bit Zeldas, and then eventually with Link to the Past, he was just like, it just didn't register with him. So it was really cool to see him jump into Zelda. For me, though, I think it was something of my age. I already had 2 kids. I was busy. I was commuting into New York. I think open world Zelda was just like, I don't have time for this. I just don't have time for this. Like, this is too much. Like, can we establish some boundaries so I could feel like I could get through this thing? And I think it was just too, for me at my age, it was just like, yes, it's gorgeous. I love everything you could do. It plays beautifully. I love being in Hyrule again with Link, fighting these enemies. Even the broken weapon thing did not bother me. It was just like, it was just this overarching feeling of like, I don't have time to get through this. And I think it was the same thing with Tears of the Kingdom, where it's like, I have to take December and go back to that game and give it a fair shake, because there's just no time for it. There's just going to be no boundaries. It's just like intimidating for an old man. It's like, I have so much to do. I can't take this on. So I think that's why my bias was against these 2 new Zelda games. But it started with Breath of the Wild, where it was just like, can you make something that I could get through in 25 hours or something? Can we just go back to the way Zelda used to be?
Yeah, it's definitely a contentious change, I think, for a lot of people, despite even its acclaim. That there's definitely some people that, like yourself, that's like, yeah, this is cool. This isn't necessarily Zelda, though. I mean, that's what Colin always said. It's not Zelda, which I would always argue it's like, it is very much Zelda. It is just they've done it in a different way, a very Nintendo way, as I think you've mentioned, or maybe that was about Mario. But yeah, this game, what I think is so interesting about it is that, don't get me wrong, Zelda was always very popular as a series, but in combination with the launch excitement of the Switch, and then this game being, even if you just remove what your expectations are of Zelda, being what I would call a groundbreaking open world title, where in its format of how it did open world, that you weren't getting a million quest markers and you weren't really given a lot of direction. It was kind of just, hey, go do what you want to do, figure it out. Again, not going to be for everybody, but at the time, we had been inundated with so many Ubisoft style open world games like Assassin's Creed. Here, we're going to throw up a million markers on a map. And then you have this game, Breath of the Wild, where you kind of don't even really have a map when you start the game. You got to unlock it. Yeah. And I know that that's kind of like Ubisoft, how you open up different points, but it's not necessarily this littering of, here's 12 activities that you're just going to do slightly different across the map. Micah, I know you're not super into Zelda, but surely you're, the cultural impact around this time with this trailer and then just the launch was surely something that you were, tuned into.
Oh, I absolutely had a ton of friends who were just wildly excited for this game. Pun not even intended, just that just can't happen. But I wanted to like it. I remember thinking maybe this would be the first Zelda that I would really give a try. I had previously tried Twilight Princess and I got frustrated very early on because I remember being like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't like that I'm chasing a monkey around for a half hour. Like, what am I doing? And I just remember being like, I enjoy sitting back and watching the story of the Zelda games. I like watching other people play them, but I don't enjoy it myself. So I thought, I'm going to try this one out. I'm going to see if I like this. And there were just too many things for me that didn't make it inviting. I didn't like that the weapons broke. And it was just a lot. All right, it's like you're trying to climb a slippery surface and you're almost at the top, and it's like you're running out of stamina, you're gonna start slipping down. It's like, no, don't. He just like slowly slides back down. And I just remember also just the puzzle aspect, not my thing. I appreciated that it's like, hey, there's 100 ways to do a thing in this game. There's not really a wrong answer, but if you're not doing it the right way, it's still gonna be like way more difficult. I just remember realizing this isn't for me. Still enjoying watching, somebody else play the game. I can certainly appreciate like what it is, but it was another one for me that I tried it and I just said, this isn't my type of game. It's just at the end of the day, Zelda games are just not really for me. They're difficult, they're puzzlers, and that's just not my style. But absolutely had so many friends at the time who were just like over the moon about this game. And I enjoyed watching them play it. That was something we could bond over without me having to be frustrated and feel real stupid, fighting water pipe Ganon and all that. I'm just like, I can't do it. I'm just too dumb.
Let me chime in here. I'll defend. You guys aren't attacking Breath of the Wild, but I'll just say my experience with the game. My very vivid memory is that this came out when I was working at my old job. Doing video editing, and Holly was working at the coffee shop / bakery, and we had one car. And so what we would do is that we would wake up. I think she had to be there at 6 normally.
Wow.
And so we would wake up at 5:30 and I would drive her to the bakery or coffee shop, and I would drive home. And at that point I was like, well, I'm up. And I would get a coffee at the shop, right? And so what I would do is that I normally went to work around 8 or 8:30. So I had 2 hours in the morning. And for, 3 months straight, I was just playing Breath of the Wild before work every morning. And I remember it was like cherished time. Because obviously I was going to play when I got home too. But there was something special about sitting down. It's still dark out. No one's in the house. Not that Holly bothers me or anything when I'm home, but like just fully focused on, I've got 2 whole hours that I'm just going to play this game and explore and figure things out. And I was one of the people that was really fatigued by a lot of the open world stuff. And this is something that comes up on Sacred a lot, where Colin and I are totally polar opposites, where Colin wants to be told everything on what to do in a game, where to go. And that's fine. I understand that checklist mentality, but I remember over and over playing Breath of the Wild and thinking, holy shit, how did they think of this? There's this area of the map. There's this total big underground area. Just so many times this sense of discovery over and over again throughout the game. There is problems with it. I think the biggest problem that it has is the lack of dungeons. The shrines are cool. I got kind of tired of doing them. And the divine beasts are just, they were cool, but not a replacement for traditional Zelda dungeons, which is something I think that they fixed pretty well in Tears of the Kingdom. But yeah, amazing game that I look back really fondly on, and super cool to have at launch.
You know what else, Dust? There's something about Breath of the Wild. I don't know if I'm just too old to not remember this happening sooner, but there's something about Breath of the Wild specifically, continued with Tears of the Kingdom, I would say. But since Breath of the Wild, that really put Zelda on the map as like a pop culture IP for the first time. Not quite in the size of Mario, but something where now you would see Zelda shirts, even retro Zelda shirts at Target. And there was a whole area of Party City that had Zelda stuff, Link's sword, the iconography, the shield. It was the first time where Zelda became like a popular enough IP largely for kids to dress as Link for Halloween and stuff like that. And there's also something about, I feel like even though Breath of the Wild wasn't necessarily for me, and I like Tears, even the limited time I spent with Tears of the Kingdom, I already like it better for some reason. And I'll be able to articulate that better in the new year when I actually sit down with it for an extended period of time. But there's something about Breath of the Wild arriving where I feel like it shouldn't have been a surprise. In other words, like, think back to Miyazaki and his crew creating the first 8-bit gold cart Zelda. It was very much the same thing. It was very obtuse for gamers of that period to say, all right, you're thrust into this world. We're not telling you what to do. Find a sword, go gather some rupees. That's your money. And with enough exploration, you'll eventually figure it out. But we're not spoon feeding you anything. You do get the sense like if Miyazaki had his druthers in the 80s, that first Zelda game would have been open world if he could do that in 8-bit form. So it was the first time where they were realizing almost, or actually kind of proving out what they always wanted Zelda to be, which was something where you're thrust into this fantasy world, very Ghibli-esque, very, a lot of kind of like that fantasy RPG adjacent charm. Lord of the Rings, think Lord of the Rings, right? We're thrusting you in this world. We're not really holding your hand. We're not going to guide you. You got to figure it out. You could go infinitely in that direction. You go infinitely in that direction. And I'm like, not to the degree of Colin. He's a little bit of a maniac. But like, I like Zelda with some sort of parameters because I think that's what makes it. I think that's what makes an adventure game different, sets itself apart from an RPG, for instance. But there's something about open world Zelda where you feel like it had arrived the way they always intended it. And I definitely acknowledge that. And I think people that really spoke to a lot of people,
Right.
Even people that came up like, like somebody like Dustin, not a kid, like a little one like I had at the time, but somebody like Dustin who was already in his 20s, where it was like, oh yeah, I'm ready to see Zelda in this light, So
yeah. It's fun thinking about the original NES Legend of Zelda. When I had first played that, I was too young in that I just didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
They just put you in. They're like, here's a sword.
Games weren't like that.
Yeah.
Then.
Just, go figure it out. But it's, but yeah, it's interesting to think about. And I think that was, you can see they did some kind of design talk on Breath of the Wild where they made a version of the game that looks like the original NES Zelda, where they were kind of like mapping out how they wanted the game to structurally operate, and then a lot of it was inspired by that original NES game. So awesome title that was, a great thing. I mean, quite frankly, saved the launch of the Switch. And let's go ahead and get into the launch now. March 3rd, 2017, the Nintendo Switch launches for $299. There is one model, so one, I guess you could say it's two SKUs because there was the gray version with gray Joy-Cons and then the red and blue version, which I think was probably the most popular. That's the one I got. And I wanted to read you guys the list of launch title games. We had 1-2 Switch, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Skylanders Imaginators, Just Dance 2017, Super Bomberman R, I Am Setsuna, World of Goo, Little Inferno, Human Resource Machine, Snipper Clips, Fast RMX, and then Shovel Knight, Spectre of Torment, along with the treasure trove of other Shovel Knight games. So this is pretty standard Nintendo in that launch is a little lighter than you might expect. They had Mario Kart coming just a few weeks after. But Micah, what do you think of this launch lineup? Which ones were you picking up?
Yeah, there wasn't a lot here for me. Okay, I got 1-2 Switch, obviously, and I did thoroughly enjoy that. I got the gray Joy-Cons because that's all that was available when I pre-ordered. But that was the thing. Boyfriend at the time, big Zelda fan, so we got that. But I was waiting for ARMS. I was waiting for Mario Kart because it was just like 1-2 Switch is fun, but where's my big story game? Where's the thing that I'm going to sink a ton of time into? And I believe at this time, because I Am Setsuna, I played that originally on PlayStation. I do own it for Switch. Treble ate it, which is great. But so I still have the chewed up cartridge for the collection, but it's not usable anymore. But I do remember being a little disappointed with this launch lineup because it's like, oh, there's not a ton here for me. And as we've talked about, like Snipperclips, that game stressed me out so badly. It was adorable. I remember thinking like, oh, I'm going to like this. I'm going to like this a lot. And the immediate panic that game put into me was just awful. So there wasn't really a ton for me at the launch, but we made it work. It was one of those things that 1-2 Switch did, the appeal of that did not wear off for a while. So I had fun with that, but no, this wasn't the best launch lineup that I experienced.
Yeah. It's I remember for me thinking like I was totally satisfied with just having Breath of the Wild, but now as an adult, this was one of my first console launches that I had money that I could just irresponsibly spend. You couldn't even do that as a kid. You had no money. So it's just like whatever you got, you got. But this, I remember, I think I got Breath of the Wild and I bought Fast RMX, which is a cool kind of F-Zero style racing game. It's not amazing. It's not something that you need to go back and check out. But I remember being really impressed, like, whoa, this looks cool and it's portable. The graphics are amazing for a handheld and that being really neat. 1-2 Switch was something, I think I rented it or got it on Gamefly or something. And we played it a few nights with friends and I thought, this is fun, but I'm really glad I didn't spend $50 or $60 on it because it's just a little light. But Dig, you mentioned being at the local game store. Mm-hmm. What games were you picking up that night?
Yeah, man. So, I forgot all about Bomberman R. That was a launch game. I might have brought that home with my Switch and BOTW. I may have. I just may have. But you know what's funny about that game? I believe it's still in the shrink wrap. I don't think we ever played it. I don't think I ever played that game once. And I remember getting Snipperclips, not the day I brought home the Switch, maybe that week, just because I wanted to, I thought it would be nice to have, let me see if Helene and Lilia want to play something. And they never touched it. It was me and Graydon, and it was that I remember that game being oddly addicting but highly frustrating because I was playing with a 6-year-old, and mind you, he was probably just as smart as I was at that point, but just having to coordinate with another player, I thought it was super cute visually, but also and conceptually. But it was one of those games where you get so frustrated that just in pure defiance, you have to get further and further. And then you get this growing chip on your shoulder, and you got to keep going just because you're angry at the game. And I remember just having that sensibility and just eventually beating it because you're just so angry at the game. You're just like, and it gets harder as you're getting angry. It gets harder. And then you're trying to coordinate. And there's so many times where there's one particular challenge where you're getting so close over and over again and just incrementally closer every time you try. And it's just like, oh my God, it's like propelling you onward, but I don't even know if you're having fun. It's like that frustrating, but it's also adorable. So that's making you angry. It's like, why are you mocking me type of thing.
Yeah.
Like the little paper characters are mocking you, but I loved it. I loved that. I really ended up reflecting on that game as being something really inventive. I know Nintendo published it, right? They didn't develop it though.
No, I think it was some indie team that, Nintendo picked it up. Developer is SFB Games.
That's right. We may have even talked about that a couple of weeks ago. I forget. Yeah, but those were my two. It was really Breath of the Wild and Snipperclips that were making the rounds early on in the Moriarty house in 2017, at least until, that summer.
Right. I remember playing the demo for Snipperclips, and that was enough for me to say, this is not a good game for Holly and I to play together. Holly doesn't like frustrating games by herself. And so when you add another element involved, which was me, It's like, this is just not gonna be a healthy.
Yeah, how many divorces, I wonder, came out of
Snipper Clips?
Right. And because I feel like, too, everyone just has a tolerance for different types of frustrating games. Because for me, Overcooked, an incredible game. I love Overcooked. And that was one that it's a game that takes it makes you very anxious at times. And there's like yelling and screaming about soup. But that game I tolerated because I just was like, this is so fun, though. I don't know what the difference was between Snipper Clips of that game just did not grab my interest the same way. And I was like, it's not worth it. The anxiety is not worth it. But something about Overcooked, I mean, I was all over those games. And those are games I definitely still recommend to people, so long as your relationship is in a solid place. Otherwise, it's just going to wreck it.
Yeah. We liked Overcooked. Overcooked was more, there's something about it. It is frustrating but it was more so, hey, I know you didn't hear what I said or you weren't able to do it because you're also dealing with crazy stuff in the kitchen, right? Whereas Snipper Clips, it's like, no, you just sucked and you didn't do the right thing. And the rage is more personal with that game. But
I totally agree.
So moving on, I want to get in with the listeners here, but I wrote out just some of like what I felt like were some of the biggest moments and the biggest fails of the Switch throughout its life. And we can break these down however we want. Or I'll just read mine and then I'll throw it to each of you and you can either comment on one or add some of your own, of course. And there are, of course, more than this. These are just the ones that floated to the top for me. The biggest moments, Animal Crossing during the pandemic, just becoming a massive, massive success, becoming the second or third best-selling game on the platform, hitting like this critical mainstream, people going out and buying Switches for it. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, that reveal and how crazy it was to see the lineup and that game being absolutely huge. The reveal of the Switch OLED, for better or for worse, because some people wanted a Switch Pro, and it ended up just kind of being this more minor update in some ways. Obviously, the screen's way better. And then the launch of Nintendo Switch Online, particularly the classic library, taking some time to really become what it is today, where initially it was a little mixed in terms of what was available. And now I would say it's like 10 out of 10, maybe not 10 out of 10, but overall really good value. So, Micah, are any of these big moments striking you, or is there anything that I'm drastically missing?
Oh, I mean, Animal Crossing, for sure.
Yeah.
Highly anticipated game. And it was just, obviously, it wasn't their intention, but releasing that during the pandemic really was just like, this was perfect for so many people, myself included. A very welcome distraction from a time that was just odd. It's like, I'm working from home, I feel isolated, and just like, here's a cute little animal game and I can connect with my friends on, some level. We're all texting about it. We're all chatting about it. It just was like, that moment was huge. The only drawback to that is that I noticed that Animal Crossing makes me slightly anxious in a way. And I think it's just because it reminds me of that time. And I took a very long break from it because every time I thought about playing Animal Crossing, it just reminded me of being alone in my studio apartment just for days at a time. And I was just like, that part was bad. But I do want to I always think whenever the next Animal Crossing comes out and I get like a fresh start with it, then everything's gonna be fine. But that game, because of when it came out, it does have a kind of a negative connotation in my brain almost of like, it was a bright spot during that time, but now in a sense it reminds me of it. But that was just, in terms of just like my friends who weren't super into gaming, but who were texting me constantly about it, that was a really cool moment to share with them because they always humor me when I talk about games that I'm excited for. And here was something we could share of like, now you're really excited for this game too. So that was a highlight for me, definitely.
Yeah, I'll never forget I think I bought one copy digitally and then I wanted to get one physically for Holly. Because we both wanted to play at the same time. I actually bought Holly's Switch for Animal Crossing. Number one, because I didn't want to share. And two, because the you had to share an island if you play on the same Switch. And that sucks.
Stupid limitation.
Yeah. But I remember going to Walmart to buy Animal Crossing. I don't know why I was at Walmart in particular, because normally I go to Target for that kind of thing. But, I don't know if people were masking at that point. I think they were masked, but just the eeriness in the air that I'm going and no one knows what's going on with COVID, and going and buying Animal Crossing, like this cheery game. And then, playing it during lockdown. It's funny because I think it was and wasn't the perfect lockdown game, in that it wasn't perfect at first because there's only so much you can do in a day.
Absolutely. Yeah, your tasks are limited, especially at first, of like, well, all right, I spent 20 minutes gathering all my fruit and my flowers, and I sold what I could, and now I'm going to sit here.
Yeah.
And that was like, all right, well, what do I do next?
Yeah, and some people were changing the clock on their Switch to jump ahead. I get it, but that was when I was playing Persona 5 Royal, and I was happy to switch between the two. Dig, any thoughts on my short list of 4 big moments, or is there anything you want to add here that I know I'm forgetting some big stuff probably, but it's just a general overview?
Yeah, I mean, really, my mind goes to, again, just like over this period, over this console generation of the Switch, Nintendo sort of reestablishing themselves as a force to be reckoned with in gaming, and just remembering the conversation going into Switch from Wii U as the baton was being passed of, look, Nintendo never lost its luster as a creator of quality games, especially first party stuff. But the talk was at that time, at that period of going into 2017, of, is Nintendo capable of producing quality hardware anymore? Because during the Wii U generation, it was like, I know the conceit was, look, it's an HD Wii, and it has a controller with a screen built in, and how anticlimactic it felt even during the, it was a short-lived period, but even during the Wii U's heyday, it felt dated. So it was like, that was the talk. Are they finished? And is the Switch gonna usher in, is this the death knell for Nintendo? And then cut to 2023, banner year for Nintendo, everything, this run up that they've had, but certainly culminating in everything that's happened this year, of going out with everybody having such high hopes and high expectations for the next thing. They really flipped the script. I mean, it's pretty damn incredible, that they're going out with such strength, and how they completely changed the story over 7 years, and how by the end of this thing's life cycle, they're going out with such momentum over a 7-year period of this same exact hardware is pretty incredible. I mean, we're definitely, they're definitely making history there. We're going to look back and, we're going to be like slack-jawed at everything they did, that everything they managed to kind of, I guess, manifest in a way. It's pretty incredible. So I just think of them just over this 7-year period, kind of almost in defiance of that reputation of, oh, really? You think we're finished? And just kind of responding with, how about this? Which just seems like coming out of the year, it hasn't even ebbed. It's just like it's even incrementally just going up, where I wonder if it's dangerous in a way to get expectations so high, because how can they possibly live up to everything they've done in 2023? But, you got to applaud everything they've done since the Wii U, and kind of everybody predicting, their ending, really,
right?
Or changing. I mean, I remember really thinking, like, having this conversation with my brother and other people of like, are they a software company now? Are they going to become like, it really seemed like they were taking a page out of Sega's book. It's like, they're never going to stop making great games, but think of the Dreamcast era. That was the end, right? For Sega. It was like, so it almost seemed like it was taking the same sort of trajectory, and they didn't.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about just not only the success, but we talked about this probably about a month ago now, when Nintendo did their quarterly report, just how not only is the Switch hardware so successful, but it has made the individual brands that they own, their IP, insanely successful. Something like Pikmin 4 outselling all the other Pikmin games combined. The power of the system. And Dig, I do think, we've talked about this predicament they're in going into the new Switch or whatever it is, and how I've been thinking more that we're going to see the Switch live on alongside this new thing, at least to some point, just because the install base is so crazy that maybe it is a situation where it is a new system that will have some new games, but in a lot of cases, at least for the first few years, we're just getting better versions of Switch games. I don't know if that means through backwards compatibility or something, but it's a lot to think about. But alas, this episode is not about looking forward. It's about looking back. Let's talk about some fails. I got 4 big fails of the Switch. The number one being Joy-Con drift. I think this is the thing that has haunted the Switch. Nintendo has tried to sweep it under the rug at different points and really created a whole conversation around like the different types of joysticks. Hall effects is the big one now that people are like, oh, it's got to be this type so they don't wear out. And why are these new joysticks wearing out and the old ones aren't? And so this is still a problem, I think, to this day, is this Joy-Con drift issue. So that's been a big one. The Mario re-release, the All-Star package being this bare bones package that I think this was a big deal to us, but not a big deal to people in general. I mean, I still bought it and still played a lot of it and loved it, but kind of a disappointing anniversary thing for Mario to do that. We brought up the Switch Pro a minute ago, but I remember when the Switch OLED was announced, how people expected a lot more than that. And there's a lot of rumors or speculation, I guess I should say, that Nintendo was gearing up to do some kind of Switch Pro, but then made a pivot and decided, maybe we should just wait until the next console. But they had already ordered the OLED screens. And so they decided, let's just do an OLED model of the Switch, which has still been, despite it being a minimal update overall. I think the OLED screen is a big update to the screen, but other than that, a new, better kickstand. It's kind of kind of mixed in its updates overall. And then last but not least is I put the stinky ports that have come out. We're dealing with a stinky port right now that we'll probably end up talking about, or you probably will hear us talk about last week, which is the episode we're going to record next week with Arkham Knight on the Switch just being horrible, like stuttering all over the place. It stinks. It's a stinky Switch port. And we've seen many incredible ports happen where, sure, you're getting a very compromised experience. Something like Doom or Doom Eternal or The Witcher, it's compromised, but still very playable. But in other instances, we see things like, Arkham Knight, and we see Mortal Kombat 1, other instances where it's like, yeah, you stretch this a little too far. So, Micah, what do you think about some of my fails here? Am I missing any?
No, so I don't think I mentioned it on the show that I recently sent in some Joy-Cons for repair.
Oh, yeah.
Because I had mentioned previously that I was having trouble with Mario Wonder and also with Fire Emblem Engage because my Joy-Cons were drifting. Like I would be playing Fire Emblem, I'd select a character, like I'd just, hover over it and then like the grid would just like shift, 20 tiles to the left because of the drift. And it was so unbearable. I was like, I need to order new Joy-Cons immediately so I can actually finish this game. And I said, I'm going to send these in for repair just to see if they'll do it. These were the green and pink Splatoon Joy-Cons, far out of warranty. These were old. They repaired them for free. Like just last month. Cool. I got them back, about a week ago. Mm-hmm. And it just was like, they know how big this problem is because those things were way out of warranty and I was willing to pay for it. I was willing that if they were going to charge me a small fee to fix them, I was going to do it because Joy-Cons just are expensive and it'd be worth spending a little money to fix this set rather than just be down to one set only. But it's like Nintendo knows how big this problem is. They fixed these Joy-Cons that were far outside the 12-month warranty. I've had those for years. So it just was like, that's how big this issue is. that they are still offering free repairs, even though on their website it says if this item's out of warranty, it may cost, $20 to repair. And they still did it for free.
Yeah.
So that's how widespread the issue was. That's how big of a problem it was. And hopefully we don't see an issue like that again with whatever the next console is. Hopefully they get that completely ironed out, because I do love the Joy-Cons. I think they're really cool. I think they had a lot of neat stuff going on with it. But that drift issue, like Colin will always bring up, I'm careful with my controllers. And it's like, and so am I. And that's what was the proof that there was something wrong with these. Because I'm not a child. I'm not rough on my controllers. I didn't drop them 20 times. Like, I'm an adult who is very gentle with my belongings. And I have had 2 sets of controllers I had to mail away for repair. So it definitely was an issue that was not just player specific, and they knew it, especially gauging that they still repair the things for free.
Yeah, there was something like that. Colin and I had a conversation about how early PS4 controllers, there were sticks that had like a bad batch of rubber, and a lot of them wore out.
The ones that were like peely?
Yeah, mine included. Colin's like, I don't know what people are doing with their controllers. I'm like, just using them like normal, because it was bad. Exactly. It was just that none of my other ones did that.
Oh, interesting. So that rubber grommet inside just wore out somehow, or got used up, or, I guess plastic degenerates over time. I don't know what it is.
I'm not sure what the case is with Joy-Cons. This thing for PlayStation, though, was just the was like the stick itself. So this is my Steam Deck, but like the outside was like peeling off. Like,
I see what you mean. Okay.
Like it almost was like it was like made of an eraser or something.
Yeah,
it was
they
just
they crumbled under your thumbs. It was very weird, and it just was like, I'm careful with my stuff. I had the same problem with one of my PS4 controllers of like, it was crumbly. It was like it was an old controller that had dried out. Yeah, it was just weird.
Yeah.
Like a chemical reaction with the juices in your fingers.
Right. Your corrosive sweat from your thumb.
Yeah.
But yeah, it kind of reminds me, Micah, too. I know this isn't a Wii episode, but I remember do you remember when the Wii came out and so many people were throwing their controllers at their TV?
Yes.
Or like,
oh my God.
And then they would send you the Wiimote condom, like the rubbery thing that you would put over it. Yep. I ordered those. I'm like, oh, it's something for free. When I was in like, 9th grade or something. So I got them and I never used those. I was like, I'm not.
Oh, no, see, I liked those because of the tactical like grip aspect. Because once you got used,
they were ribbed,
it's like,
they were ribbed.
It's like putting a steering wheel cover in your car. Once you get used to the steering wheel being like half an inch girthier, it's just like, well, then if you go to someone's house that has a Wii and they didn't have those on it, it's like, what's this skinny little remote? Like, it sucks. All right. But like, if you get used to it, then it's like, oh, look at this. It's like a premium experience. It's squishy. I liked those a lot. And I always wore the wrist strap. My friends would make fun of me because they're like, we're 20 years old. You don't need to wear the wrist strap. And it's like, I'm putting it on. All right, the screen just came up that said to put the wrist strap on. I follow directions. I'm very good at following directions.
Yeah, it's that was, man, crazy times. I want people are going to look back at that. I think it's been replaced now with VR fails of people, like punching their ceiling light and stuff. But
yeah,
Dag, I listed out a couple fails here. Thoughts or anything you want to add?
I have a pretty big one, but I'm going to save it for my little mini game segment for this week. Stick, like Joy-Con stick drift, 100%. Like, I don't know if anybody that spent any meaningful time with this console didn't sort of go through that. But I have to say, like Colin, I take great pride in like, babying my things, taking great care of stuff and everything. So I remember that happening, like hearing the din of like my Joy-Con sticks are breaking. And it didn't happen to me for months until I got pretty far into Cuphead. And then my left Joy-Con stick just gave out. Like it totally bit the dust. It was just too much. That was just too much thumb hockey for it. So I fell victim to the whole thing too. But it really wasn't until that game where I was really abusing it that it and it hasn't happened again since I got them replaced, which was kind of cool. You know what I never hear anybody talking about? And this could be that I have like some crazy sausage hot dog thumbs or whatever. I cannot stand the power button on the top of the Switch. I cannot.
Oh.
I can't stand it. I understand the engineering behind it, that it's tiny. It's in such a location that you can't, I guess, at least theoretically, accidentally turn it off while you're playing. It's recessed. I'm not saying it's a bad design. I just struggle with turning that thing off. And sometimes it goes to sleep mode. Sometimes it goes to power off mode. Like for some reason, I just struggle with that goddamn button. And I'm just thinking, can you just put it in a really out of the way spot and raise it up a little bit so it doesn't accidentally get hit? And you could have the delay thing where you have to press and hold and the whole thing, right? But I never hear anybody talk about it. But that thing has been aggravating me for the better part of 7 years now. And it's just like, I don't know if it's just like I never have fingernails or what. I don't know what the problem is with me, but I've never heard, it must be a me thing because I never heard anybody say anything about it.
See, I find that very funny because just being a like smallish woman, I often feel like stuff in the gaming space is not made for me. Like the PlayStation 5 controller, for example, I can't stand it. Like that thing kills my hands, like immediately hand cramps. It's too heavy. I'm just not a fan of that controller because my hands are just like child hands. But for me, the Switch is like perfect because I remember people complaining about the controller it comes with that holds just the Joy-Cons, which I never use now because you have the Pro controller.
Yeah.
But I remember people complaining, oh, this controller's too small, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it's perfect for me. And so I totally hear that because it's a tiny little button. I have fingernails usually because I do keep my nails a bit longer than your average man would. So yeah, that's something that's very funny to me because for most aspects of the Switch, I'm like, this thing's perfect. It's not too heavy. The buttons aren't too like anything. Like I really love this console pretty much all around. But that's very funny to hear because I'm usually the one who's saying like, there's something slightly challenging about using this console because I have like small hands or something.
Well, that's good. At least we know it works for somebody. I mean, I'm not a big guy, but I guess I do have freakishly girthy thumbs. I'm not showing them because I don't want to be made fun of.
It's the muscles from animating. Like is just one thumb big? Like the one you're
you have like toe thumbs? Like what's
yeah, my right thumb is a little bigger, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, maybe someday you guys will see them, but I'm not going to put them on camera. It's
Megan Fox. That's who I'm thinking of. She's got those toe thumbs. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh.
Have you ever Googled her thumbs?
I don't think so.
Oh my God. No,
are you going to ruin Megan Fox for me right now?
I mean, it'll only ruin it if you don't like it. But
this is like a George Costanza thing.
She's got thumbs like a big toe. It's very funny.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. What is happening?
That is something.
That's ruining it for me.
That's really something.
There's a lot else to like. I'm not trying to be a hater, but whenever I think of toe thumbs, she's like the poster child of toe thumbs.
That's hilarious.
Guys, let's get into a few questions. It's funny. I put a lot of, so I have questions about this and then I have questions for later. I don't even know if we're going to get to the later questions because if we had Gene on this episode, man, we would have not gotten any questions at all. Marathon. We're flowing through this. Not that I'm saying we're wrapping up quite yet, but yeah, this has been awesome.
I never wrap it up.
No, never. Astro Parrot King writes in and says, hello, Brick Fisters of Glory. What's your favorite box art for a Switch game? Mine is Persona 5 Royal. But frankly, I'm biased. I don't know how you buy it. I mean, I guess you could say it's your favorite, but did you work on, Persona 5 Royal? I think it's just your personal opinion. For me, I'm going to quickly say Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is my favorite. I love the way they did it. The characters, the draw. It's not just them in their current style. They made them a unified style, and I really love that. So, Dave, what's your favorite or one of your favorites?
I hate to steal yours, Dust, but I gotta go with Super Smash Ultimate because, and you guys know, notoriously not a Smash Brothers guy, but that is $1 billion illustration, right? Especially if you're a Nintendo fan. You have Mario and Link in the middle, if I'm remembering correctly, all the other fighting characters in the game radiating out, jumping towards the screen in their fighting poses. Not just Nintendo first-party IP. everybody's mashed up in there. You got Pac-Man and Mega Man and Snake and Ryu and every character you could every awesome character, Sonic, right? Every awesome character you could possibly imagine, all beautifully realized, all like this one badass shot. I mean, I think how can you not pick that one?
Yeah.
If you're just picking one, you have to. And I say that as somebody who's not a fan of that franchise.
I know, dude. That's saying something. Micah, what's your favorite box art, or at least one of them?
Yeah, I was. If you noticed me duck away if you were watching the video, it's because I was trying to see if it was on top of the stack, and it's not. Shining Resonance Refrain is one of my favorite pieces in my collection because it didn't come with a steelbook. It came with one of those metal packs. So like, the game case fits into like the metal sleeve, but it's not exactly like a true steelbook. And I just loved that. Not because it was a metal pack. I loved that design. And I was going to grab it if it was on top of the stack, but it's not. I don't know where it is. But that was, in my collection, one of my all-time favorites. And I just remember getting that game and thinking, I just love the look of this. And I love the game itself, one I totally recommend if you haven't played it. But that one always stands out to me when I'm sort of just perusing my collection. Sometimes just taking a little walk down memory lane. Or also when I'm going into the backlog to grab something and I see that game, it just always stands out to me on the shelf. That's just one of my favorites.
Yeah, I'm looking at the screenshots of this game. It looks like has some certain characteristics to it that might be appealing to my interest. Some of these different characters, just saying it's interesting. But yeah.
Well, and genuinely, that is a game that you and Holly would definitely like because it's music themed battles, essentially.
Oh.
Not in the sense that it's like a rhythm game, but
Sure.
you're essentially casting spells through songs. So, and the music is incredible. So it's just something that she would also maybe like watching you play because you get to the music aspect of it. There is like a romance element. You do get to pick a lady, if you successfully play your cards right. But I just loved the musical element to it of you cast a spell with a certain song, kind of change the tide of battle a little bit. I could talk about that game forever. It's one I recommend so much.
Oh my God. I love picking ladies. So particularly anime ladies. So maybe I'll have to check that out.
Absolutely.
At some point. Moving on to Mike Sweet. And I think we kind of went over this a little bit, but there is one story I want to tell. He says, "Hi, crew. One of my favorite memories of the Switch was getting it right before PAX East 2017, and the excitement surrounding it and Breath of the Wild. Everyone was talking about the game and system on social media. I specifically remember waiting for a panel at that PAX and taking my Switch out of my bag and feeling multiple people looking at me while I was surrounded by 3DSs. I feel like there hasn't been a time or cultural moment in the industry like that since the Switch came out. Other than maybe Animal Crossing when we were all inside avoiding the plague." So yeah, Mike, I also remember getting the Switch right before PAX East 2017. Also pulling it out when I was waiting to go to different panels. And I don't know, Mike, I don't think you were as special as you think you were because I saw so many Switches at that PAX. But one funny thing in particular, too, was that I remember that was the first time Ben and I went to a gaming event together. And I remember we were trying to figure out what we wanted to do one evening. It was 8 or 9 maybe. And we were like, do we want to go out, go to a bar or something, or figure it out? I think one of us was just like, hey, do you just want to go back to the hotel so we can play Breath of the Wild on our Switches? Hell yeah. That's what we do. We just
never ask.
Yeah. See, we just went and, we were just sitting on we had individual beds and, not that we could have slept in the same bed. It's not a problem. But
not that there's anything wrong with that.
Dude, on a lot of our trips, me and my friend Brandon, I've mentioned many times, we always end up sleeping in the same bed. And it's just because it's a space thing. And he was my friend growing up in high school that you were like, oh, whatever, we're going out, we're on a trip or whatever, you sleep in the same bed. And so now, even as adults, though it's been a few years, pre-pandemic since the last time I slept with Brandon. But I'm not opposed to sleeping with Brandon again. Just putting that out there. But yeah, this was a nice dig. And I know we got your day one Switch going there to the game store and stuff. But Micah, do you have a play-by-play of your day one?
No, because I pre-ordered mine from Target. I didn't actually get it day one.
Dang it.
So I was the loser that I was lucky I even got one, but I did not get it on release day. I'm watching everyone else play theirs and I'm like, well, this sucks. But I just think it's funny. I was also at that PAX East because I went to PAX every year for like 8 years until 2020. So it's just pretty comical to think that we all would have been at the same one. You know, it's like maybe I walked by you, maybe I stood in line behind you.
Yeah.
Just one of those funny things of would have had absolutely no clue who you were or anything, but it's pretty neat to just have that connection of all of us were there at the same time.
Yeah, that was the PAX that I went to the Kind of Funny panel, and that's the one that was right before all the shit went down with Colin.
Oh.
And Colin wasn't there, but he had not left Kind of Funny yet.
Right.
So, and I remember it would have been that Monday that he left because it was Ben and I were hanging around in Boston. And I remember seeing the tweet. I was like, oh, shit, it's going down now. It's Kind of Funny. And just because I had seen them at their panel a few days prior, that was very weird. But a nice PAX memory nonetheless. Let's get this last question in here. Last question about this topic from Bono Clay. Hey, Fisters. I travel and move for military pretty frequently. The portability and surprisingly wide third-party support has made this console special to me. I don't care much for Mario and Zelda, but the support from Square Enix and Capcom in particular has been fantastic. Whether it's Octopath Traveler or ports of Resident Evil games, there's a lot of good stuff there. Do any third-party games stand out to you? So I found this interesting because I am the exact opposite. I play very, very little third-party stuff on Switch. But Dig, is there any third-party stuff or games that you're like, I'm going to pick that up on Switch instead? Not necessarily just ports, but even a lot of these like RPGs that can kind of come out anywhere. Like I guess Sea of Stars was a good example recently.
Yeah, it's a great example. That's an awesome example, actually. And there's so much I prefer playing on Switch these days. I said this recently. I don't remember the last time I played with this thing on the dock. I always have it sort of off the dock. In my studio, I'm always kind of trying to dodge the family at night. So it's good for me. I can hide with the Switch. Mm-hmm. So I prefer playing games on the Switch. And I love like all the support for indie games and third-party games. If you type in, I did this recently. If you type in Capcom to the eShop search, dude, it's a litany of games. It's insane. And I'm such a Capcom mark that I love seeing stuff like that. So I love the variety of indie and third party and first party and new stuff and retro stuff. The Switch kind of, in a lot of ways, has it all. I mean, of course, we talk about the games that it can't seem like a bridge too far technically or, engineering wise to kind of process. But for the most part, I'm not afraid to play games on the Switch. I used to be the same way with PC gaming, which was really my start of PC gaming was like last year with Halo, right? Because I don't have any Xbox consoles. But then I proceeded just to play RE4 Remake and Dead Space Remake and the Alan Wake games on PC. So I'm down for whatever now when it comes. The only platform I'm really off is Xbox proper, but at least I have my Microsoft stuff on the PC. So yeah, I think the Switch has a lot more to offer than I think people even realize generally. And also, if you pay attention, if you're like a value shopper, you like to clip the coupons and stuff, there's always great deals on super good games on the Switch. I think more so than on any other platform, I would argue.
Yeah, dude, checking out, there's always random stuff on sale. A lot of good deals to be made. Mm-hmm. Micah, I know you're a big third party fan. In fact, that's probably, you're kind of like this right in here from Bono or Bono, whatever. I'm guessing it's Bono, like you two. I'm guessing you're a lot like him in that some of this third party stuff is more appealing than Nintendo first party.
Yeah, exactly. Of the Switch, much like the Vita used to be, the Switch is my JRPG machine. And it's where I just play a lot of these titles, mostly because Colin and I share our living space. yes, we have multiple TVs. I could go upstairs and play it by myself, but we just, at the end of our work days, we enjoy sitting in the same room. You know, we're playing separate games. We might be listening to podcasts, but that is some of our time together. So part of why I play so much on Switch is because, like Dagan, it's handheld and I don't have to share a TV with anybody. And it is just the way I play the majority of my games. And one of my all-time favorites that I have to bring up, Triangle Strategy, which was my game of the year for 2022. It just is, I mean, if you love strategy RPGs, amazing combat and battles, really inventive story, an awesome sort of like detective mechanic that I wasn't sure I'd be into, but it has you essentially like gathering intel to make your choices for the next battle. If you miss some information, it will change the whole game. Like, it's just fantastic. A game I completely recommend to anybody who loves, you know, Fire Emblem type games. It's just got so much going on. Multiple endings, your choices truly matter in that game. I just adored it, and it was perfect on Switch. So much of what I like to play, just in terms of genre, works really well on Switch, and I'm just lucky for that. Something like Call of Duty is not what I'd want to play on Switch. Something like The Witcher 3, which I adore, is not something I really want to play on Switch. But turn-based games, you know, things that just work for this platform, things that work for a console that's a little underpowered, there is a ton to choose from. And yeah, absolutely. There's so many third-party games that, I mean, I Am Setsuna is one that if you haven't played that yet, go play it. Like, that's one of my all-time favorites now. And I recommend it to everyone. I've played that game multiple times. And I can't play it anymore because Trouble ate it, but maybe someday I'll play it again.
Yeah, it's definitely leaning towards a lot of RPGs. The Switch is awesome. And Dig, you were playing Final Fantasy on Switch, all the Pixel remasters.
Yeah, all the remasters. Yep, 1 through 6.
Well, guys, let's go ahead and that's, I think, a nice place to end it for our, not for the whole episode. We got a little more to go, but for our looking back at the Switch, we got an hour and 40, even without Gene. So clearly we had a lot to say, and I know there's going to be things that we didn't touch on, but just a nice time to reflect as we start to move forward with the new product, whatever it is, the new Switch, whatever. But before we go, I want to first do Dagan, your topic, your this is what is consolation. Your segment, please hit us with it.
Yeah, so an easy peasy one. I'm glad we skipped ahead on the games. We'll get back to doing some games where I have you guys pitted against each other.
Yeah,
in the arena of Nintendo nerdom. But I'm glad we didn't do that without Gene because we need him here for that. So just as an easy breezy one, just want to pose a question to you guys and put an interesting spin on something we've been talking about a lot with Nintendo this year. So what I'm proffering here for you guys is thinking about 2024. Instead of what you hope to see from Nintendo, what do you guys hope we don't get in 2024? Now, we could talk about with Switch continued, we could talk about the Super Switch, the next hardware generation, games, epic franchises. Maybe you want to see a sequel. Maybe you want to see something new from an indie developer that you like. Whatever you want to say. I'll start by saying, if we get the Super Switch next year, which looks likely, right? We'll say for now, safely, that one of the big things I had a problem with, and of course I'm like, I already told you with the Switch, I'm undocked indefinitely. I'm sold. I love playing this thing as a handheld. But the docking of the Switch always bothered me a little bit. I think it was a little clumsy for me, a little inelegant, a little clunky, the way the cords stick out the back. I just thought it was weird. You know, the screen could potentially get scratched. That was a big thing in 2017 until they figured that out. Thought they would kind of change things with the OLED and stuff. But in my engineering brain, which is a very limited brain, I don't have much of an engineering brain. I think ahead, like, what can they do for the next one? And I guess I would like to see some sort of self-docking thing where it would be interesting if it's going to be a horizontally formatted game system again, if they could put it vertically, but have those built-in kickstands where it could just kind of stand on its own without a separate dock unit. But I guess ideally what would be cool is if it didn't need a dock or if it could just lay down flat somehow. Like if you think of charging your iPhone on one of those kind of weird iPhone chargers, just laying it down flat rather than standing up in an actual dock unit, which I don't know. In 2023 going into 4, it's starting to seem a little antiquated. So for the docking, that would be on my wish list. Don't give us another dock. At least, don't do something similar to what we've been dealing with for the last 6 or 7 years.
Right.
So
that like awkward jiggle where you're trying to figure out, like trying to line up,
weird.
and it's like,
it's
just
when I put it there upside down, like the number of times that I'm like, why isn't it charging? And it's like, I did it wrong.
God. Can you imagine? I had when the Switch came out, a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old. You know how many times that thing was just like, what is happening? Like, just in there, weird. It's vertical. It's like, what is happening? They need to. It's weird because I think the Switch itself, the Joy-Cons, the whole thing is pretty elegant, but that dock seems like almost afterthought-ish. I don't know. It's the weak link in the tech.
Now, I agree, especially there is no pain greater than trying to plug in the HDMI cords to the Switch dock. Like the angle is weird. I have to fuss with it every time because, HDMI ports are just at a premium at our house. So usually like one console is unplugged. Like right now it's the Xbox and the Switch are what switch places. So it's just like whenever I do have to switch that cord around, it's just like, oh no, I gotta plug it into here. It's just always a headache.
It's a mess.
Plug the cords into the dock just because the angle that the ports are at, it's just not ideal.
Yeah, it almost feels like they had all this time to design this elegant handheld thing, and then like we have 2 days, we still forgot about the dock, and it was just like they had to scrape this whole thing together in this plan that they just kind of put together in cheap or something. But Micah, is there anything else that I'll hand it off to you first? Is there anything on your wish list of don't do's? Please don't give us this in 2024.
Yeah, what I want to say is please don't give us a radical change, because I think Nintendo, it's just in their blood to say the next console needs to be wildly different.
Yeah.
Like you have the N64, the GameCube, the Wii. They're just each one so wildly different. And I want them for once to just say, this console's good and we can make it better, but we don't need to bring back a stylus. We don't need to add a second screen. We don't need to do anything stupid. Like people like this one. I really do feel like Nintendo's like always chasing the dragon of like, but what if it was this? What if it was a hoverboard too? And I'm like, I don't want it to be a hoverboard. Like, don't bring back a stylus to, 3 screens. Like, just make it more powerful, make the screen better, like make it a better system. But like for once, Nintendo, please like follow the Xbox or the PlayStation model, improve on the console without making it drastically different. Because it just doesn't have to be. And they were smart about that sort of in like the DS era, the DS, the DSi, the DS Lite, the 3DS, the 2DS, the XLs. Those were each one different for a functional purpose. And I feel like that was Nintendo. That was like, those were smart changes. Some of them a little weird. The 2DS being shaped like a piece of toast, a little weird. But otherwise, that was mostly smart decisions of like, these are minimal changes that don't really take away from the experience. And nobody was like pissed off that the 3DS XL existed. So I hope that they recognize what they have with the Switch and say like, we're not going to make this radically different. It's not going to be round. Like they're not going to do anything dumb with it, because I just want them to recognize like people like this exactly the way it is. We already like it. It's great. Just make it better. And that's all I'm asking for.
Yeah, it's really smart. I love that. I love it.
I think for me, I'm trying to phrase this in a way with don't be afraid of new IP, and don't just rest solely on what you currently have established. I say this because I think of, you guys will have to correct me if I'm wrong, but the big new IP for Wii U was Splatoon, which has become massively successful, iconic franchise for Nintendo. For Switch, is the only real big one ARMS?
Yeah.
Is that their
I
only
think so.
I mean, new IP Switch.
Pretty much. Yeah.
So Nintendo has really kind of settled in on some of these different things, or some of these IPs, whether it's and so I think to some effect, particularly I think about how Metroid, I think, got a lot of shine on the Switch with both Dread, Metroid Prime Remastered, and what they wanted to be Metroid Prime 4 on the Switch, which inevitably is not going to happen, I think, until the next Switch or whatever's next, Super Switch, whatever. But and also getting a lot of remakes is cool. I actually am a big fan of remakes in general, that I love bringing these games forward. But Nintendo is such a creative company, and they have such, I think about with their IP, how iconic and distinct the art direction and the characters are. Character design is one of those things that I think goes so underappreciated in what it takes to create number one, a unique character that is also appealing and getting all of those elements right. Anyone can make a unique looking character, but is it appealing?
Right.
And not even just appealing enough to become like a major factor and hit of the IP. I think of Splatoon. Like, sure, you can tell there's like some of that 90s Nickelodeon vibe, but
yeah,
I can't think of anything that looks like Splatoon, really. And I understand why they probably don't do it very often, because it's I'm sure insanely difficult. But I don't want the lack of success around ARMS, which I think is an awesome game, to scare them away from trying out new characters and new IPs and new ideas.
It really is an awesome point, dude. For a company that's so innovative and intelligent, and there's always some sort of cleverness integrated into it, and very thoughtful. They are very conservative with developing new IPs, almost to a fear of failure capacity, where it almost seems like an ARMS maybe derailed them from, or discouraged them in some way from going for. It's really important to honor and perpetuate their big legacy franchises and their IPs. Of course, they're going to do that. But at the same time, it would really be cool to see them introduce and try out new things, because not only would it benefit them as a company, I think, but also I think you could argue that they have the resources to do that now. Like, they have to take some of that Mario and Zelda money and sort of invest in their blue sky. You know what I mean? Like, you have to develop new shit. It's such an important part. And, like, IP is hard too, especially in Nintendo, which is very curated. Like, all your IP, not in a Smash Brothers capacity, but all your IP has to somehow fit together in such a way that they stand out from each other. You don't want an IP stepping on the toes of another IP. So that they have to work as a family. And I think that's tough to do, but I don't know what's stopping them. Like, they're still holding on to that one conservative aspect of the company, which is like, we don't develop new shit. You know what I mean? We just kind of it's almost like resting on their laurels. It's a bad look for a creative company, especially one now that's investing in media outside of games. So this would be a good time to embrace just that one bit of innovation that's lacking. I think it's a great point.
Yeah, because I was just going to say, even something like Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker, which is an adorable little game, but it could have been a different character altogether. It was like, they're selling you on a new idea, but we're going to put Toad in it, which wasn't a bad thing. It's adorable. But that could have been an entirely new character, a little treasure hunting dude. And it's just like, and then instead it's, let's just take one character that people already like. Nintendo in that regard is like, we're going to sell you on you already like this, and now it's a new idea. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's the whole concept of it could have just been an entirely new game, an entirely fresh character, somebody we haven't seen before. And instead they were like, well, we're going to put a familiar face in it to try and win a bit more people over to it. And I don't think they had to do that, because the game was fun and great already. You didn't have to put Toad in it. You didn't have to reuse some of your characters that we've already seen a million times.
It's a great point. And it would have been a great kind of platform for a new character. You have this isometric thing. It's adorable. You can't jump, right? That's the whole conceit. So it's like a whole new inventive spin on gameplay. That would have been a great time to introduce a new universe, a new character, a new sidekick. Yeah, that's a great point, Mike. I never even thought about that with Captain Toad. Yeah, smart.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Dig, for that. We'll have to see. That's a good question. I'd like to ask Gene at some point too. Too bad he's not here. But guys, I have so many questions here, but I think I'm just gonna ask you guys one of them to end us out here, just because I know Micah's got another recording in a bit, so I don't want to hold her too long.
And the packages too. I got another batch of 50 packages to drop off at the post office, but we're doing it 50 per day. We're getting them all out.
Woo! Nice. So I'll ask you guys just this one question to end off our show here from the Snack Squatch. It says, hey guys, what is your fondest Nintendo related holiday memory? For me, it's hands down my 4th grade Christmas. My grandma bought me my purple GameCube, along with Super Smash Bros. Melee and Pikmin. I'll never forget booting up and playing Melee for the first time. Thanks for all you do. And so let's talk about just, this is our holiday break episode. Let's end it a little sweet with some holiday memories. So, Micah, is there any Nintendo related Christmas memories you'd like to share?
Oh, so specifically, the pink and green Joy-Cons were a Christmas gift. And I was just so excited to get them because, as I mentioned, I was only able to get the gray Switch, which, of course, I was just still thrilled to even have one. But I did want, the blue and red Joy-Cons, but that wasn't the model I was able to get. And so I had the gray ones. Getting the pink and green Joy-Cons, I just loved seeing them on there. Just the shot of color that it put into the room, and it just made it just even more fun to play. Those Joy-Cons, opening those, I just remember being like so hyped about it, immediately popping them on the Switch to play it. It just was like, I love all the colors they've come out with. I have not bought very many because the Joy-Cons are so expensive. It's not, I haven't bought as many like to collect as I have with other consoles controllers, but I do remember distinctly opening those on Christmas and just being so excited for them. That was definitely a favorite.
Dig, what about you with Christmas and Nintendo?
I gotta hit you with a bitter Nintendo Christmas memory. And I don't think I've ever talked about this on Punching Up, though. I probably mentioned this. We've probably talked about this on Knockback because it affects Colin too. When I think on my 16th birthday, because my birthday is only a few weeks from Christmas, I got a Nintendo, an NES, and I think it was, if I remember correctly, it was the Control Deck set. So the unit itself, 2 controllers, and the pack-in was just Super Mario Brothers. No Duck Hunt, no Zapper. So that's the only game I had for a few weeks. So on my Christmas list, I put 3 or 4 Nintendo games that I asked for specifically from Santa, right? Colin must have been, how old was he at this time? 5, right? So I got for Christmas 4 Nintendo games. That's the good part. The bad part is these were the 4 worst games possibly ever created. Like my beginnings with Nintendo, it was just bad mojo. Like it got better, but it started at the bottom. So the
Can I guess one?
Which one?
Deadly Tower, maybe?
Deadly Towers was one.
Okay, this was on Knockback because I was trying to. And dude, I had that game too. Obviously, way later.
Did you really?
Even I knew as a very, very young, 6 years old, I was like, this game sucks,
dude.
Deadly Tower.
It was a case in point lesson in don't judge the game by the cover art.
Yeah.
It's not about, you learn the hard way. So it was Deadly Towers, Athena, Popeye, which was a Nintendo IP, and Urban Champion, which is a Nintendo IP that I'm glad they buried because it was the worst. The Urban Champion might be the worst game ever created. I'm not even talking about just Nintendo or just NES. So those were my beginnings with Nintendo. Thank God we just kept playing Super Mario Bros. It's the only decent game we had for months. So that was my earliest and still my most emotional Nintendo Christmas memory, was just getting the word, which is, that back then this was to the tune of $60 per game, so this is what, $250 worth of shit. And, you couldn't do anything. This was pre-Funko Land. It was like you were stuck with these things. You could
Now,
try. I remember
Tegan-
trying to trade them to friends, like dupe them into like, oh, you don't want Kid Icarus, Metroid. You're tired of that, like, and they quickly caught on.
Well, Dagan, did you know immediately that these were bad games? Like, aside from that, these weren't the games you wanted. Did you know as soon as you opened it, oh no, not that game? Or was it not until you played it that you were like, oh, this is bad? It's not just that it's not what I asked for; it's that it's actually bad.
No, that's a great question. These were games that I asked for because I thought they were going to be. I think it was just that because this was probably pre Nintendo Power, so we really had no way of knowing rather than just seeing behind the counter at KB or something. Oh, that game looks cool. That game looks cool. And maybe with Athena, it was SNK. So I already knew Neo Geo. So that must be good. Dude, Athena might be the most broken game ever created. It was just impossible to play it. You get to a boss fight. It's like glitching out and stuff like that. It was crazy. It wasn't good. I kind of missed the day of when they got away with making games that bad with the Nintendo seal of quality on it. It's like, how did they pull this off? What kind of backroom dealings were going on here that Nintendo actually okayed this? But it's an interesting era because it probably wouldn't happen today.
Right. Yeah, the backdoor shady deals, maybe handy, oral, who knows what's going on in the Nintendo.
Goodness.
Certain games didn't need the oral. It wasn't necessary, but they did it anyway.
I think that game would have been okay without it.
Yeah. For me, my fondest Nintendo Christmas memory was getting a Wii in 2006 because it was very, very difficult to the point where Christmas morning in 2006, I opened up I got maybe a shirt that my parents got me, and I think I got an extra a Wiimote, but there was no Wii under the Christmas tree, but there was hey, we'll get you one when we can. And I understood that. I had asked in advance. I was like, please, I want a Wii so bad. So it was agreed. My parents was like, okay, we'll get you a Wii, but that's pretty much all you're going to get. We'll get you a Wii and a game, right? But the very next day, on December the 26th, my dad and I went to Target at open, hoping maybe they'll get a shipment. And it turns out we were just there with a bunch of old people trying to get Christmas decorations for cheap. But we went over to GameStop, and the guy was like, well, we don't have any right now, but there may be a shipment coming in around 10 or something like it. It's late in a few hours. Come back then. So we came back, and he was like, I have 2, and one of them is being sold to this family right here. And we were like, we will take the other one. So Christmas was, I don't want to say, it's saying saved to me, it sounded like it was ruined, but I didn't know if it wasn't going to be till mid-January that I was going to get a Wii, and I was just going to be waiting around. Literally, I remember having the Wiimote and just holding it, looking at it, thinking about what it's going to be like to get a Wii. Like, man, this is going to be so cool, but all I got is this controller right now. And then the Wii just being so awesome at launch, being able to play Wii bowling, of course, but also Twilight Princess.
Oh, right.
And eventually Mario Galaxy, I think the next year or the year after. Just all incredible memories. So
was that the beginning of Nintendo's scarcity? That was the start.
No.
Right?
Well, I think you could argue, I mean, this is before I was alive even, but wasn't there a lot of stock issues with like Mario 2 and 3, like for games?
I don't remember that. That I don't remember.
I've seen like the news reports of like people are like, no one's able to get their hands on this new Nintendo game, Super Mario Brothers 2.
You could see Nintendo being like, we're going to do the Cabbage Patch thing. No one's going to be able to get one of these. Like, that's what they like in the West.
Right. Let's see Nintendo.
Mom's fist fighting in the aisles for Mario 2.
No, exactly. Sinbad's punching another dad trying to get a copy.
Yeah. There was, I know I've heard of this. There was a chip shortage in 1988 that led to...
I think you're right.
Some games being scarce. That's always the question, though, Dag, is that Nintendo's always able to have an excuse, which is somewhat valid, but at the same time, you're like, oh, what are you doing here? Are you, like Amiibo is definitely like manufactured for sure. The main, like,
my God.
There's no excuse.
That was insane. The classic consoles too. They were impossible to get.
Oh,
They were impossible to get.
And they're still so expensive.
Yeah.
You have either one.
They maintain their prices for sure. Yeah, I think a lot of people were hoping, kind of hedging, like, these are going to go down eventually. No, not at all. Absolutely not.
Well, that's it, guys, for our holiday episode of Punching Up, which I realize now, I looked at the calendar, this is coming out the day after Christmas, but you're still in the Christmas spirit for that week between, before New Year's. So I want to take a moment, say thanks everybody for your support of Punching Up in 2023. This is our launch year, and it's been awesome to have you guys support us and, try out new things for Last Stand. And it's been an awesome time just getting this show going. And then 2024 is going to be our first full year of the show. So thank you guys so much for the support from the whole crew and Gene, even though he's not here. I'm sure he would agree that it really means a lot. Doing a new show is a scary thing. You don't know if anyone's going to be there for you, but we should have known better with the Last Stand audience. We knew they were going to be there for us.
Absolutely.
So thank you guys. And of course, for everybody on Patreon as well, patreon.com/laststandmedia. We appreciate it so much. Your support, particularly now as we look back at this year. It's unreal that we get to do this and, be able to make livings off of it. It means a lot. So one last time, I'll go around. Dag, hope you're having in the future, we're recording this. I hope you're having a great holiday break. Any closing thoughts?
I think it's very meta. I wonder what we're doing right now.
Might be dead for all we know. I mean, this could be a poorly timed joke. I might be dead. Any one of us.
That's terrible.
At Last Stand, though, I mean, we would be crying, but we'd be laughing about this clip, surely, to some degree, just knowing us. But I don't know. I'm putting myself at risk here. Maybe we won't be laughing.
You know what? Going back to the horoscope episode of Constellation, I told you to stop smoking, Dustin. I told you to protect the lungs. All right. So maybe that'll all come to fruition.
Listen, I had a smoke about 3 weeks ago with my friend because we were at the bar. Sometimes you have a few drinks and you're like,
I get it.
Nah, I got it. Dude, once you get a few drinks, it's like, I gotta have a smoke. I don't smoke. I'm not a smoker, I would say, but occasionally with the boys. But maybe that one is what's going to do me in the next 2 weeks, Micah. Who knows? Anything's possible. But, Dig, I don't know. Did we cut you off?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, what were you? Can I ask what brand you was it a menthol?
So I initially was smoking. I got flavored Lucky Strikes in Japan that were these berry menthol Lucky Strikes.
Oh my!
I used those all up it took me since I got back. Smoking with friends and stuff occasionally.
Yeah,
but then it was at this bar that still had a cigarette vending machine.
Oh, I love it.
Oh.
And it was very expensive, but the boys, I was like, the boys want to smoke. It was Camel Crush. Menthol. It was very nice. They're not great, but they are very cool and refreshing. I don't recommend smoking.
No. Don't smoke.
Especially smoking regularly. You shouldn't even do it occasionally, but on that night I did. So
I get it with drinking. I used to smoke Parliaments, the recess
Parliaments.
Filter.
Okay.
Recess filter. Had to have it.
I know what you're talking about. I've had a Parliament in my lifetime before, but I don't remember why.
They're
probably
light.
From a friend.
They're light, but it's a terrible habit. But I get it. It's there's something about drinking and a cigarette. Like there's just don't drink and don't smoke.
Yeah,
that's it.
Micah, any closing thoughts for this last episode of the year?
No, I hope that we've all had a very nice holiday. Hope the listeners, of course, as well, have all had great holidays. Hope Santa Claus brought you what you were asking for. And I hope if you were naughty, you got a big old lump of coal. But you put that coal in your smoker. All right. Don't let it go to waste. So I just hope everyone has a safe and happy New Year's as well. Maybe you get going on some resolutions. Maybe you don't. But I just hope everyone has fun, safe time, and that we're all alive next year to continue our show.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a definite. But yeah, thanks guys. I super appreciate it. We super appreciate it. And thank you, of course, Dag and Micah, for joining me today. And stay tuned because Last Stand has exciting stuff on the horizon in 2024. So with that being said, thank you guys. We'll see you next time. Goodbye. Punching Up, a Nintendo podcast, is a product of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand, LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is written and produced by me, Dustin Furman. My co-hosts are Gene Park, Dagan Moriarty, and Micah Watson. The show is edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by Ramon Narvaez. Punching Up, along with the rest of Last Stand Media shows, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your kind contributions and generosity to our independent endeavor. Thank you.